Hello, everyone, and welcome to Writers Drinking Coffee. This is a podcast based on writers sitting around drinking coffee or cocktails and talking about writing, publishing, the whole creating process. We do not censor ourselves, so please consider us PG-13. Your hosts today are John Schmidt, David Welsh, and me, Jeannie Warner. This is episode 47, With a Song in My Heart. We are here today welcoming something kind of new for us. We have singer-songwriter Jeff Brown. Jeff, say hi to everybody.
Hello.
You were introduced to us through our amazing tech gal, Deirdre. So you have known her for a long time, or?
It's I met her through a dear friend of mine who I had known in high school, and she was the officiant. No, she wasn't the officiant. She was involved in my friend's wedding. So I've known her, quite some time.
See, never let go of people and network like crazy. You never know.
Well, I never let go of good people.
Right. Well, welcome to Writers Drinking Coffee. And we have talked a lot about writing poetry and writing stories and writing different genres. And I would love to get together to you because I have been in a band. Dave's been in a band. John sings all over the time. Let's talk about writing songs and lyrics and how the process works for you. Did you always know you wanted to be a singer-songwriter?
Well, so I wrote a lot of poetry when I was younger, as we're wont to do. Eventually, it got less terrible. And long around the time that I was 11 or so, I was introduced by accident to a band out of England called Iron Maiden. And after about 10 seconds of listening to one of their albums, I decided I want to learn how to do that.
You couldn't see, but I did a little Iron Maiden air guitar like Ella Wayne's World the second you said that.
But yeah, so I've been playing guitar since I was 11, and I was in a host of bands, really heavy stuff for quite some time. But as good musicians should do, pigeonholing yourself into listening to one genre is dangerous. So I would listen to all sorts of different genres, and while I was still playing the crazy, crushing heavy metal, I was listening to, Jeff Buckley and Leonard Cohen and a lot of other, more sensitive singer-songwriters. And eventually, right after I was in college, I was in a band, and we toured for several years, and we broke up spectacularly. And then I decided to do the more singer-songwriter thing because it was just me.
When you broke up, did the drummer explode?
Well, literally no, but figuratively it was ugly.
I think bands are very much like marriages, and if they don't end badly, then they don't end. So all of them kind of end a little badly.
It felt like I broke up with 4 boyfriends at once, which is weird because I've never done it before. But it was crazy.
Yeah. I've broken up with a couple bands, one for musical differences and AKA we wanted to practice, and then other ones just because of relocation. Did you leave a band behind when you moved from Chicago to Virginia?
Sort of. They're still there, and we haven't officially broken up because I love making music with all of them, and up until fairly recently, it was a little bit easier to travel back and forth. But we're still in the middle of making an album together, so we just don't. It's just harder to get everyone together to rehearse.
We're calling it Music in the Time of Cholera. So
Music in the Time of Cholera.
Yes, the loneliest year, I think.
So how do you start? If you think, I've always thought that poetry has we call it pantsing versus plotting when you're writing a novel. Do you view music the same way? Do you plan out a song, or is it more of I've got this riff. Oh, hey, I've got this lyric. Okay, let's see where it goes organically.
Yeah, typically one of two things will happen. I'll either be inspired with some sort of melody, and the music will come first. I'll have an idea of a chord progression or some sort of little melodic hook or whatever. That happens far less regularly than just some nugget of clever wordplay or something that I overhear that inspires me to play around with it a little bit, and then I have this little idea of a lyric line, and that rattles around for anywhere from a couple hours to a couple of years. And usually that's where everything kind of starts. And then, sometimes I'll have, a melody line that goes along with that lyrical bit of something, and that fleshes out into a song. I have a lot of, my phone is overflowing with little voice memos and things.
That was exactly what I was going to ask, is how do you record those? How do you organize yourself to say, yeah, what was that thing I was humming? I really liked it. It reminded me of Trey.
Yeah. Well, back in the day, I used to call my answering machine. Back when answering machines were a thing.
We're all old on this call. We get you answering machines.
Yeah. What's that?
Did you ever pick up on the other end?
Oh no.
Oh, thank God.
That would have been very meta.
That would have been, Jeff, this is a super bad idea. This song will kill the entire Eastern Seaboard.
Either science fiction or horror, possibly both combined. Thank you, Jeannie. You've now got a new plot for Bluebird.
Always. So you say you started on heavy metal, and then I noticed on your webpage, which we will send a link to everybody, you described your songs about girls and feelings mostly.
Yeah, it pretty much covers it. Someone had asked me once what my main writing influences were, and I thought about it, and I said girls and alcohol.
That's fair. There was a long time, for instance, musical history that I was sure it was all about motorcycles, cars, and making out. So
there you go. I've never ridden a motorcycle, and it took me a longer time to do the other things. So talk about girls and alcohol. But
it's an extension of the basic Irish. She's a beautiful maiden. The English have stolen all my sheep, and God, we're drunk.
There you go.
You just don't have any sheep.
There are a lot of cows that live across the way, though.
Are they yours, and why not?
Because they are currently on the property of our next door neighbor. So theft is probably bad. But we get to watch them, and actually, if I open up the window, they're probably still moving. But
so is this your? I was going to say, being a singer-songwriter, is this your entire day job, or is this the avocation because you have another day job and you have not yet signed the major record deal that's coming?
So I'm an entertainment attorney.
Awesome. That's actually very convenient.
I went to law school for the purposes of being an entertainment attorney, because being on tour with that band, I just saw so many of my friends and so many people I cared about just absolutely eviscerated by the recording industry. And I thought, well, what can I do to make sure this doesn't happen to me and to people that I like? And I met a woman in Chicago who was in, pretty influential band in the late 90s to early 2000s. And she said, well, I'm going to go to Northwestern Law School and I'm going to be a rock and roll lawyer. And I thought, that's a great idea. So,
I was going to say, I just got excited. You are here to finally explain how Queen did not win the lawsuit versus Vanilla Ice for the dun 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 digga dun dun.
If anyone can explain it to me, I would love to know.
Yeah. So
But apparently theirs was dun 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 dun, and Vanilla Ice's was dun 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 dun. So there you go.
Uh-huh.
Did you ever represent yourself? I'm just here to ask meta questions, by the way. So.
Well, as it turns out, the big piece of advice in the legal industry is that a person who represents themselves has an idiot for a client.
Yeah, I've heard that. So is that a no?
That would be a no.
Okay.
I try not to get into trouble to begin with. So.
Well, it brings up, we have talked to IP lawyers and copyright lawyers on the show before, because people do fanzine writing, and I don't know if there's really a musical equivalent of, besides maybe filking, But
Yeah.
is there, the sort of taking of one riff and using again? It seems to happen less in music than it does, rappers accepted.
I think in music it's better hidden, but because I know personally, one of my fun exercises is, if I just can't think of anything to write, I have a dry spell, what I'll do is I'll take a song that I love, and I'll say, okay, what is the chord progression behind this? And I'll take that chord progression and change the key, speed it up, slow it down, rearrange it in some manner to where, that's a building block to do something totally different with it.
Yeah, it's funny you mentioned chord progressions because it's fairly. I play a lot of jazz, and in the jazz world, it's fairly well understood that any given chord progression is kind of fair game as long as you don't actually rip off the tune, the melody. That's entirely.
Yeah, well, that's the thing, because I have worked on several copyright infringement cases, and the idea is that when you're dealing with musical plagiarism, there's the rhythm and then there's the melody, and those are the two main components. And if the rhythm is different, if the melody is different, based on that same chord progression, it's not plagiarism.
Yeah, so it's interesting. How did chord progressions get a pass, right?
Yeah, well, I guess it's similar to writing, is that there's only so many words in the English language, although they keep on adding stupid ones from time to time.
There was a magnificent rant done on the topic of Pachelbel somewhere back like 2006 of somebody who played. These are all of the stories that are basically to the Pachelbel, chord progression.
Yeah. Oh my goodness.
Well, I guess if chord progressions could be copyrighted, then there would only be one 12-bar blues song and so on. So yeah, maybe it's okay.
There's two?
Well, I read something fairly recently that there was a couple guys out of, I think it was Berklee School of Music, that ran this program that generated, every possible imagining of chord progressions and melodies, and they copyright all of them and put them into the public domain.
I remember reading that too.
Good for them.
Yeah.
So do you ever sit down and say, I am going to write a song for John? Or do you decide in advice to say, I am going to create something, a story about this, lyrics about this, a song about this?
I have done that. It usually ends catastrophically.
I see. Where does it go wrong?
Usually I'm going to write a song about this, and my subconscious goes, yeah, good luck. But
that proves you're writing poetry.
All right. Because
that's what happens with poetry. And the next thing you know, you're standing in a field. The moon is high overhead. They're burning down the village. Wait, what? But so knowing that writing poetry about Dave is going to be disastrous, how there's your muse, but there's also your discipline. What is your discipline trick to write a song? Because writing a poem, you limit your form to a degree, but setting that to music and limiting the point is an extreme that I have. All right, so I write bad contrafait, which is a fancy way of saying Philk all the time. But writing a song cold, scary. Yeah, because with parodies and with things like that, it's like you have this template to already work with. And it's like, all right, well, here's the melody, here's this. All I got to do is take some words and fit them in, massage them here and there. Which is historically a major source.
Yeah, to a certain extent, that's sometimes how writing songs goes. Because if I'll have this little nugget of melody, and eventually, I fiddle around on my guitar, and it turns into a full-fledged, complicated, repetitive chord progression. What I typically do is I'll record that, and I'll listen to it, a dozen times or any one of a number of times, and I'll just just humming, gobbledygook into my phone until eventually, words start appearing out of the ether, so to speak, and then you get the phrases that come from that, and then it's like, all right, well, now I have this rhythmic melodic construct. Now I need to find words that rhyme with this and figure out where the song is going. So to a certain extent, sometimes you are writing poetry to fill that, predicated space.
Yeah.
Well, that kind of answers one of the questions I was going to ask, which is, we've talked about the process of writing a lot, but adding music is kind of a whole new dimension to it. So you have to put the two things together. So, even writing poetry isn't that, I guess. The verse form is probably about the closest you come in poetry to trying to write the music along with it, and
yeah, there's so much more freedom. It's like you don't have to rhyme at the end of lines if you don't want to.
We've also talked about constraints actually being good for the creative process, because if your search space is infinite, then you you really just kind of spin your wheels. Do you find that having some basis for starting with, whatever that is, makes you more creative?
I do. So, gosh, it was probably 11 years ago, I discovered a group called the February Album Writing Month, which is probably similar to the National Novel Writing Month. But it's a challenge throughout the world based on this website for songwriters everywhere to write 14 songs in 28 days. Because, in a lot of places, what else are you going to do in February?
Oh, we are totally, you got to get me the link to that. We have to share that. That sounds awesome.
Absolutely.
I'd sing it on a leap year.
In the leap year, they encourage collaboration to write 14 and a half. But it's
clever.
Right before I discovered this, I had this feeling in my head that all of my songs were starting to sound the same. They were all, 6/8, country waltzes and C minor, and everything just kind of felt the same to me. And if they felt the same to me, I can only imagine what people who were listening thought. And I kind of wanted to expand, how I write, what I write. And this website came along, and I say that it's the best thing to happen to my songwriting since I discovered what a capo was. And but they'll have prompts. They'll say, hey, why don't you write a song with this thematically, or why don't you write a song that like Bohemian Rhapsody, or not Bohemian Rhapsody, Happiness is a Warm Gun, where none of the parts repeat themselves over the course of the song, or like different writing challenges to sort of get creative juices, bubbling a little bit, and give you a starting point. And man, that website has been wonderful for me.
Do you find inspiration in the artists who already kind of borrow a bit from jazz, like you have Sting uses 5s and 7s, Jethro Tull 5/7 weird ass time signatures? Do you find you listen to that and it sort of frees you up to make different statements in your poetry? Absolutely.
I tend to write in 4/4 and 3/4 and 6/8. But, coming from that, metal background and, listening to stuff like, Fantomas and Mike Patton and Opeth and Dream Theater and jazz and all these. I'm huge into classical and opera, and a lot of the more modern composers are just all over the place with time signatures. And it's nice to be able to have that option, even if it's hard for me personally to write in them. Sometimes they'll happen accidentally. I wrote a song where there were a couple of measures of 7/4, and I was like, oh, well, I didn't mean for that to happen, but hey, cool, now that it's here.
There's also, one supposes, do you have a lot of influence or any influence listening to foreign music? For instance, like Middle Eastern music, you get a lot of 7s, a lot of 11s, a lot of odd time signatures. Mystère de la Voix Bulgare, so Bulgarian music, does that ever just sort of jump on you a little bit and say, hey, let's do something different?
Not really. I'd like for it to. But I do listen to a lot of opera. So sometimes, especially with some of the German and the Russian and the Scandinavian composers, the less romantic based things, like, you've got your French and your Italian. But some of the other ones, they tend to push the boundaries a little bit more. And it makes for some more interesting listening. And, any musician who doesn't listen to as much as they can to get inspiration, get, new ideas and, new modes, is doing themselves a disservice.
That's very similar to what they say about writers. Writers should read a lot just to understand what people are doing, points of view, what is the narrative. You being a guy, you've written about girls. Have you ever tried writing from a different point of view at all?
I have. You try to write from what you know, and my life experience is fairly limited like that. But I talk to my friends, I watch movies, I listen to this, and I try to envision what this point of view would be, and I think being an attorney has helped me tremendously in that. But you're never going to get that genuine experience from me.
Right.
But I certainly try.
I was just thinking, like, there was somebody wrote by some comedy of When You Come Home, a song written by your dog, or some of these other. Should you bark? Yes, we should all definitely bark. I'm on support right now. I should bark and chew on that thing.
Can I fit it in my mouth? No. Okay. Can I gnaw on it until it does? Okay. Yes. Let me do that.
Just playing with that perspective, I could see could bring a lot of interesting new ideas.
Yeah. I also look at it too, I could write a song from the point of view of, this woman over here, and it would never be as honest as it would coming from that woman over there. I could certainly try, but and that's the thing that I love the most about folk music and the sort of singer-songwriter stuff that I do, is that it just feels real, it feels honest, and that's the most important thing that I try to bring across with my music.
Do you mostly, when you're writing, record it down, or do you do notation for it, or what is your actually producing it so that the world can, if somebody wanted to look at it, do they have chords, do they have published bits out? Have you considered publishing?
I haven't. I have an abundance of notebooks with various scribblings and scratchings and chords and lots of things crossed out here and there. Because I have been working with other musicians in band formats, I have been doing a marginally better job at writing things down in a more readable format, so I can teach people some of my music.
Right. I mean, it's sort of just another idea of the publishing way. It's you publish the music and you perform it, but is there a Jeff songbook coming out?
Part of the self-deprecating musician in me thinks, why the hell would anyone want that? But that's just me, I think. But I haven't really thought about that.
There's a lot of power in a lot of people coming together to sing together. John, who is it that was emo? I can't remember the name of the guy who said coming together to sing. It makes a very profound influence in people's lives, whether they're doing it on Zoom or out the windows in Italy during this time. I think singing and music are hugely important.
Brian Eno, and the actual quote is, to live a long and healthy life, sing in chorus. All right. Possibly not, actually. Anyway.
I actually just saw a couple of days ago a video of thousands and thousands and thousands of people singing along to a Foo Fighters song.
Was it chorus?
I don't
know.
Choir. Maybe. But it was just lines and lines of drum sets set up and a whole bunch of stands with a bunch of people around it with microphones and an army of guitarists and an army of bass players, and I thought, that is super cool. And yeah, it's powerful.
It is. Every year at Stanford, they do, the Messiah sing-along and play-along. So Dave could show up with his trumpet, I could bring whatever instrument, and we could just sit down with our own copy and just play along. I haven't heard of Theremin in it, but I think...
Do-it-yourself Messiah, yeah.
Theremin is clearly needs to be part of the Messiah next time.
It has been there. Although my favorite was still the euphonium, the marching tuba section of the Stanford band who showed up drunk, missed an entrance by two bars. The director, who's the head of the music department, stopped everyone, looked at him and said, "I still control your funding. Shall we try that again?" Or you could leave. And wow, they were boom.
That's
they
beautiful.
Were right on.
Instant sobriety.
No, they were still drunk, but wow. And it sounded amazing. Or the year the recorder concert with 26 recorders showed up, including 5 contrabass recorders. They just threw them in with the brass section and away they went.
So what advice would you give? If we have kids, as I said, John has a whole lot of younger folks that he's coaching with writing and moving forward. What kind of advice would you give to a kid who says, I want to be a singer-songwriter lawyer?
I take it maybe wait until we can perform music publicly is not an option.
Well, this is a beautiful time where they can be closed in, and if there's any kind of angst, going on that you want to turn into music, one supposes this wouldn't be the worst time for it, although it's super hard to be creative when you're stressed, I presume. Is that affecting you the same way?
It really is. I mean, and I'm looking back at here, and I'm working every day. My wife is an essential federal employee, so she's working every day. And, aside from, a lot of, irritations here and there. You know, I moved from Chicago to rural Virginia 2 years ago, and I feel like just now I'm starting to make friends, and I can't see any of them. But, you know, honestly, life isn't that bad. You know, it's like I know so many people that have it so much worse. So it's like every time I think about being stressed and complaining, it's like, well, it doesn't suck that much.
Have you heard Tim mention some people have it worse than I song?
No, but I believe it.
I will post that on your page, on the page that we do for you, just so that you can truly appreciate I have to face another day.
Yeah. But yeah, back to what advice I would give. Don't be afraid to write a lot of garbage, because you will. And eventually, it's like sometimes people end up loving your garbage. Because, you know, once you write it, you can't control what people are going to like and what people won't. But the more you write, the more you can figure out. I mean, I look back at stuff that I wrote 2 years ago, 5 years ago, 20 years ago, and some of it was just absolutely horrible, should never see the light of day. But every once in a while you get that, it's like, well, actually, that wasn't so bad. And, you know, you start, you know, with repetition comes mastering it, and eventually, you know, you figure out your voice, and you figure out this feels good, let me go with this, let me refine this, and eventually, you know, more of what you're doing is less unpalatable.
There's also a more direct feedback loop when presumes because you instantly have performance there to say, all right, I'm going to play a new song for you, tell me what you think, and then you can just do it and get that instant feedback of you get a few pets of like, good for you. Now, what was that?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I mean, I used to, when I was in Chicago, there was a weekly open mic that I would go pretty regularly with just some astonishing talent. And it was such a receptive, warm, understanding room that, you know, I would play these new songs, and afterwards someone would say, all right, here's what worked, here's what didn't. And sometimes, you know, as you're playing it, you figure out, it's like, oh no, this is not either not as well rehearsed, or this lyric line does not flow as well as it did on my couch.
Or that sounded much better in the bathroom.
Oh, everything sounds better on my couch. But yeah, playing out live, those opportunities, you know, it teaches you very quick what works, what doesn't, what is receptive, and what is received well and what isn't. You know, and even now, a lot of people are saying that the music industry is hungry for positive songs, which means I'm not going to do anything for them next year. But
well, you know, they say Sting took some time off there, and they're like, what was going on? He's like, well, I was happy, you know. So
yeah, it's the joke. How do you ruin a songwriter's life? Make them happy.
But
unless he's Bobby McFerrin.
Well, I also look at it too. I mean, I when I got married a couple years back, someone had said, so are you not going to write any more depressing songs? And I said, of course I will, because I'm creative and I have a long memory. But
and there's also, one presumes, all of the relationships one had in one's brain that never get out, like Me and Liam Neeson, I'm sure, is a song that is yet to be sung. And and that's still in there of the songs. You know, my friend wrote a whole album called Songs for Women I Don't See Anymore. And you could write Songs for Women I Never Went Out With. And there's a lot of guys that could really relate.
It'd be a very long album.
Well, yeah, you know, a 3-album set.
I think it's going to have to be like a Spotify channel.
Awesome. Well, we would love to. Go ahead.
And eventually you'll have a cruise based around it. So, you know, like Joko. But right. That's another story.
So it is.
I want to go on the Joko cruise real bad. I mean, maybe not now, but...
I'm kind of soured on cruises in general now, so I don't know if I'll ever go on one.
Yeah, I went on one, and I discovered that I am not a cruiser. But I used it as a means to, like, I want to go to this island and then this other island. And the boat is the easiest way. But while I was on the boat, I'm like, this is just not for me.
See, now I was perfect for it because the entire wait staff knew my name, even though I used a different name from them every time. Excuse me, madam, Jeannie, what's my name today? Today you are Rudolfo. Yes, ma'am, what would you like? Something with rum and peach. And, you know, if you're whimsical and cheerful, you know, people will wait on you. It's great.
It's a solid combination.
It's true. It's true. So Jeff, we're going to put links to both your songs and your webpage, and if there's something you want to really focus on and say, people who try out should go look at that, send me that link and we will put it on our website, which is www.writersdrinkingcoffee.com. You can find us on Facebook or Twitter. We answer email. We are delighted to nag Jeff to answer email. And you can find us on basically any of those places. And we will put also, you have a Twitter link? We'll put Jeff's Twitter link there too.
I've got it all.
You've been listening to Writers Drinking Coffee, a labor of love and enthusiasm put together by the hosts. Our main web support magic is brought to you by Deirdre McGaffey-Schween, and our sound engineer and backup web spider is David Welsh. Our intro music is Pretty Maid Milking a Cow, and our exit music is Breakfast with a Morning Person, both by Michael Engberg. You can hear more from Michael Engberg on manyhatsmusic.com. Our podcast sponsor is always Jackal Designs, enabling you to buy cool WDC swag, including a great line of t-shirts of all of our great quotes. Thanks so much for listening, and thanks for being with us, Jeff.
All right.